Hello, happy Easter everyone. I'm sorry I can't be with you tonight, but currently I am crewing on Sea Dragon on a 3-month expedition. At the time you're watching this, I'll be somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. I would just really like to say a big thank you to everyone from St. Mawes Sailing Club. I didn't realise how special sailing was until 2014 tall ships. Sailing up to Greenwich as part of a crew opened up my eyes to a different way of sailing. Growing up through JST, I had the best childhood, but because I didn't win Junior Race Week or local regattas as a helm or compete nationally, I didn't think I was a good sailor. I thought that after Junior Race Week, playing on one designs or IODs if people needed crew would be the most sailing I would get to do. But thankfully, that wasn't the case. I discovered the world of sailing for science, and thanks to the support from everyone, especially the Rosalind Youth Sailing Trust, the church and Suez, I got to take part in Expedition Amazon. The point of this expedition was to track the dispersal of microplastics outside of the 5 gyres, and to explore the connection between our own health and the ocean's health. I sailed from Brazil to Guyana trawling for microplastics. Whilst in Brazil, before we set off sailing, we did beach cleans and ran workshops with local schools to teach children about the extent of marine litter and the effect that it could have on their own personal health. And now I have a 3-minute interview for you with the head scientist Diana. The audio is a little bit quiet, so you might need to turn it up.
We are recording.
I don't know if it's
1, 2,
good,
3. Interview
Ah,
with
this is
Diana.
So I'll just record a load of stuff and then I can chop it up and mash it up later.
Okay.
So who's that? What do you want to say about it?
About what?
The trawling. Is there anything you want to say that was missed out of the last film? Or?
You mean missed out on the last
Expedition film.
Why don't? What? Can we just start with you asking me a question?
Yeah.
That would be the best.
Answer your question.
So why are we trawling?
There you go. We are trawling to collect microplastic, plastic that's less than 5 millimeters in size.
Okay.
And the reason that we're trawling out here is because most of the effort has been closer to the 5 known large gyres, areas where the plastic is known to collect in the ocean. And we are being opportunistic in our campaign to raise awareness about microplastic in the ocean, and taking groups of very diverse groups of people out onto the ocean to see how the science is done, to be able to explain the science, and at the same time look at areas that aren't being looked at right now, and that may not even be looked at by other research teams just because they're lower priority. We're places where we don't expect to see plastic, but where we really need to know whether there's plastic or not to be able to have the models complete to be able to predict where plastic is coming from, where it's going, and etc. So it's pretty valuable information. Unfortunately, we get a lot of zeros. So we come up a lot of days we come up with nothing, which is really good information, and is really, it's wonderful that we're not seeing it. But at the same time, we are collecting a lot of plastic. We didn't collect much on this leg from Recife to Guyana. A few pieces here and there. We collected a bit more on the crossing from Senegal to Recife, and we also saw a lot of floating debris. It's interesting that where we saw a lot of floating debris, we saw more microplastic. We've seen very little floating debris on this leg, and we've seen very little microplastic. So there seems to be a relationship there. Last year, when we crossed the Atlantic from the Canaries to Martinique, we saw a lot of floating debris, a lot more than this year. and we had a lot more microplastics. So that's kind of an interesting, observation in itself. Um,
Another of the amazing things we got to do on this voyage was to collect valuable data for eDNA. This is an amazing advance in science. One of the latest suggested uses for this is for the future of fishing. We have the potential to be able to track how many fish are in the ocean without having to catch a load and then get an estimate from what we have in the trawl. However, we were working with Barbara Driego from Sydney University. Simply put, trees and plants talk to each other, and you can kind of tell them what to eat through the microbes in their roots. This is already happening for mining waste. Simply put, you can plant reed beds to get rid of pollution, or you can go fancy in GMO plant life so you can tell it to eat really hazardous stuff. What we were looking at was for the presence of microorganisms that could be told to eat plastic and recording the conditions, if present, that they need to live. This was very exciting because this project was taken up by the White House in 2016 and they made it a priority to fund, which means you can find out more on page 19 of the White House Office of Science Technology National Microbiome Initiative if you want to look it up from 2016, but goodness knows where that's at now with Trump. This is a clip from a lecture I did on my body burden. On a personal level, we looked into the connection that this could have on our own lives. Another reason that plastic is scary is because all of the persistent pollutants that have been banned because they're deadly make their way into the ocean. In the grand scheme of things, this isn't great, but the ocean is massive and it would be very hard to get a concentrated dose. But plastic acts as a sponge for these chemicals and is now concentrating it. This does have a positive. You could argue that it could be a good thing, and if we can get the plastic out, it's win-win because we'll get the chemicals out too, but unfortunately, animals are eating the plastic. In the natural world, marine life at the bottom of the food chain eat microorganisms, and they know where they are because they emit a chemical smell called DMS. When plastic's breaking down because of wave motion and UV, it emits a synthetic version of this smell, and this is why marine life is eating plastic, and this is how it ends up in our food chain. We didn't do a thorough enough of a serious test to depict if I was exposed to these chemicals through fish, but I have been exposed to chemicals which are associated from plastic. The most worrying is PFOA, the lining in my waterproof jackets, and it's also used to stick Teflon to pans. Because of my exposure to this, I have a heightened risk of stillborn children, liver failure, chloracne, and general cancer, which is a little bit terrifying. What was more interesting about this, though, was the elder women on the trip had nearly nowhere as much of this chemical in their body burden as I did, and saying they were triple my age. It's very interesting. And then when you look at the other side of it, you can see the DDT ban did wonders because their levels were worryingly high, whereas I only had the minimal exposure, which could have been passed down to me from my grandmother to my mother to me. But on a positive note, I've been doing a lot more sailing, and I also competed in the North Sea Tall Ships Regatta on Vejle Bay, and we came first and beat the Dharma Jersey, and I think our tall ship was half the size of theirs, and we won overall, which was pretty exciting. But going back to X Expedition, has anyone here heard of Sky Ocean Rescue? Well, I spent last summer helping to organise Sea Dragon's arrival into London and supporting the events in London for a plastic voyage. The most exciting part of this for me, though, was that I got to meet Pangaea Explorations properly. X Expedition charter the boat for their expeditions. Pangaea Exploration, so she's a 72-foot X-Challenger Sea Dragon, and her sole purpose is sailing the world for education and awareness. So she gets chartered out by different scientists. And after the expedition, I sailed with them from Plymouth to Lanzarote, ready for them to take her over to the Caribbean to start the trip that I'm on now. Thanks to the Roseland Youth Sailing Trust, they sponsored me towards getting my day skipper. So this means I'm professional crew on board as well as a field assistant, and what we're doing at the moment is looking at El Nino and taking core samples of coral to help predict future extreme weather. The independent non-profit organisation who's leading this study is Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, or WHOI. And I would love to tell you more when I'm back in July. But until then, I've got a little clip to leave you with, and I know whistling's bad on a boat, but I really like this song anyway.